let's talk about dinosaurs. How's it going, everybody? My name is Danny, and welcome back to the 20-something Review, the show where I spend about 20 hours on a topic and give my honest opinions. This week, we're going to talk about one of the greatest loves of my life, dinosaurs. If you can't tell by my entire demeanor, I love dinosaurs. They're these enormous apex tyrants who ruled over the land, sea, and sky. They fought for survival. They were only matched by each other. They have these thighs that can crush watermelons and these tiny little hands that are just so dang cute. They were absolutely the coolest and greatest things that no longer roam the earth. And I was 100% a dinosaur kid. I read every scientific textbook about them. I knew all their Latin names. I studied all their documentaries. I knew about their bones and the habitats that they lived in. I had multiple figurines I would bring with me literally everywhere. I even found a mistake in a dinosaur scientific textbook, had my parents send it in, and the publishing company did send a reply saying I was correct. They just didn't give enough shits to actually fix it. So that's something I can flex on. The way dinosaurs are portrayed in film and television is super interesting to me because for the most part, it's through extremes. You either have the dinosaur that's going to be chasing after you, raging as a carnivorous hellbeast bent on eating and crushing your body, or they're super adorable, friendly creatures who want to share the last tree star with you before the end of the universe. It's tough to find a dinosaur show or movie that draws the line between these polar opposites, and yet somehow I found a few. I stand by these as some of the best, if not the greatest pieces of media portraying our scaly friends, and will continue to defend them any opportunity I have. So, for all you out there with Jurassic on the brain, I present to you the best dinosaur TV shows in existence. Dinotopia is a world where anthropomorphic dinosaurs and humans live together. The asteroid, the one that wiped out everything in the millions of years ago, seemed to have missed this one island, and then humans appeared and thought, yes, let's use these creatures in every possible way and base our entire culture around them. It turns out they create this dinotastic dystopian society that lacks modern day advancements like telephones or showers because, I kid you not, I haven't seen a single sign of plumbing other than a canal that runs through the city. This miniseries is possibly one of my favorite dinosaur shows of all time, and despite how cheesy and corny it is, holds up surprisingly better than expected. Honestly, considering it was released in 2002, I think the special effects are genuinely good. Even as I went back this past week to rewatch the epic saga of Dinotopia, I found myself admiring certain shots, graphics, and elements of the world. Overall, it looked appealing enough, and especially for someone who was a kid in 2002 who was obsessed with dinosaurs, I thought it was brilliant. The inspiration for the show actually comes from a series of books written by James Gurney called Dinotopia and Dinotopia: The World Beneath, although some of the details are changed into the book adaptation into movies because, most of them are, and usually for the worse, but a lot of the characters from the books actually have relatives in the miniseries, so if you know something about that and are a long-term fan, you probably would get some of the references of the names. The miniseries primarily follows two half-brothers, David and Carl Scott, whose plane crash leaves them shipwrecked on the island of Dinotopia. They learn that there's no way to get off because they got these razor reefs that protect the island from anyone passing in or out, which is how no one has found out about Dinotopia up until that point, considering we're in modern day age. But realizing that this is their new life, the brothers reluctantly begin to learn more about the Forgotten Land as they're integrated into the customs and culture of Dinotopia. Of the two main characters, Carl tends to be the more interesting one. He's your typical moderately attractive bad boy, hates learning, woos the girl, secretly cares deeply but doesn't want you to know about it because that's how every male character was in 2002, refusing to talk about anything in semblance of their emotions. David, on the other hand, is actually quite the opposite. He's this nerdy suck-up who's constantly frustrated by how much effort he has to pour into his work and succeed at a similar level to his brother because, it's the typical Carl doesn't give a shit and doesn't have to do much effort but still gets a better grade than David, who tries harder, and that's a common occurrence that happens throughout the series. Both of these characters are extremely flawed, they're plagued by their own insecurities, and they're reluctant to let anything go. So most of the story's conflicts stem from the two of them disagreeing and being at each other's throats, as most brothers in cinema tend to be. What really makes the show itself appealing is the world. Since you follow characters who are new to Dinotopia, we're immersed in their first first impressions. You're discovering what the society of dino nuts would actually look like and the flaws that emerge from being isolated from the world. You get to discover these huge dinosaur libraries and talking dinos because there are talking dinosaurs. So if you weren't convinced beforehand, there are talking dinosaurs. I think it's fair to bring up, though, that this is like a cheesy Hallmark-esque miniseries. So if that's the genre that's up your alley, you are going to fall in love with Dinotopia. But for the most part, it's just an enjoyable watch. There's something really nice about the graphics and the older style of series that I think most people can appreciate. Walking with Dinosaurs is exactly what you would expect if I told you that BBC made a documentary about dinosaurs. It's got a British narrator, it's got relatively solid CGI, and it has enough compelling nature footage to make anyone convinced that dinosaurs are 100% real, and that their parents should acknowledge that, and that they should let them adopt one, even though it's not possible, and that they're 24 years old and need to grow up. Walking with Dinosaurs always stood out to me because it has the exact feel of literally anything narrated by David Attenborough, but like with a prehistoric tone to it. It's tough enough to make a production of this nature, especially filmed in this type of manner, because typically when people are filming these documentaries, they need a lot of B-roll footage of the creatures themselves. And considering that dinosaurs have been extinct for 65 million years, miss them forever. Thoughts and prayers, baby. It requires a budget dedicated to animation and CGI, as well as any type of locations that they wanted to film in. And it's kind of wild how many places like this show actually goes to. They traveled all across the world for this B-roll footage, and that definitely cost BBC a pretty penny. Despite there being a few questionable moments, overall the animation holds up really well, and it's able to blend the background shots to genuinely make you feel like you are observing the world through the lens of dinosaurs, and it's not something that many documentaries have been able to do before. One important critique to know before going into this miniseries is that actually multiple facts presented have been disproven since its release. It's a weird thing to consider when you're talking about like a documentary on creatures where their entire purpose is to show off factual evidence in a fun and enjoyable format, yet here we are. It's not even that they were like straight up lying about the information or were just entirely wrong. It's more that since the documentary was released, studies have been done that essentially disprove some of the facts, but hey, isn't that what science is all about? Overall, I think Walking with Dinosaur brings a really unique take into the world of these magnificent creatures. And if you ever want to learn more about them from a scientific perspective, rather than just enjoying them through like a, cartoony medium, I think Walking with Dinosaurs is the miniseries for you. The last show I actually want to recommend is something that I discovered pretty recently, and I am genuinely impressed that I hadn't started watching it earlier, and that is Genndy Tartakovski's Primal. And this is literally an animator's wet dream and possibly one of the most eye-catching shows I've seen in recent years. Despite not uttering a single line of dialogue, because I'm not going to count grunts and roars and screams as dialogue, it manages to tell a more cohesive story than anything you would watch on the CW. I don't really know why I expected literally anything different from the creator of Samurai Jack, because that show is a masterpiece and definitely worth watching, but this thing is on an entirely different level. I would loosely define this show as a tragedy because it tells the story of a caveman and a Tyrannosaurus Rex who are bonded together after witnessing the slaughter of their families. They are put into an unlikely alliance, and they have to sort of work and share experiences together in the prehistoric world because they no longer have anyone else. They are essentially alone, but they're together in their isolation. And I think that's something really beautiful to watch, especially as you continue on in the series and you're able to see that the caveman and the dinosaur actually care about each other. Because in the beginning, they are sort of working together and are a bit at odds, and you can notice it through the ways that they're remaining as isolated creatures and not exactly like working as a team. But the further as you get into the series, the more you start to realize that they are connected. I think Primal is just this beautifully told story, and it really proves that animation and not needing lines of dialogue can still make something extremely compelling and interesting. There are too many things in this current society where people overlook them because they are animated, and I genuinely believe that Primal is not one that you should overlook because of that. I think it's one of the few things where nowadays you actually shouldn't be distracted by your phone, and you need to give this 100% focus, because if you're not looking at the screen, you are going to miss something, and this is something you do not want to miss. So that's been my opinion on dinosaurs. I know. Maybe your favorite didn't make it onto here. I know there's that weird Office animated one, and I've been scouring the web, all right? I've been looking at everything dinosaur for the past few months, and I can genuinely say that these are the ones I think are good. Whether or not you agree with me is yet to be determined. But if you think that your favorite one should have made this list, please let me know, because then I'll need to go check it out again, even though I'll probably doubt you, as I doubted it the first time I watched it. But that's just the way of life.